Every great idea, every innovation, every revolution in human thought began as nothing more than a possibility, fragile, uncertain, and often invisible to those who could not see beyond the present. A dream is not a random illusion that drifts into your mind, it is an untested equation, a silent experiment waiting for the moment it collides with reality and reshapes it. Just as the scientist enters the laboratory with no guarantee of success, you too enter the journey toward your dream with incomplete information, unpredictable outcomes, and the quiet understanding that the only way to know if it works is to try. The world often mistakes the dreamer for the fool. It is easy to dismiss what has not yet been proven. People will measure your dream by the limits of their own imagination, and when their vision falls short, they will conclude that yours is impossible. But possibility is not determined by majority opinion, it is determined by evidence, and evidence only comes after the experiment has been run. If you abandon the process before the trial begins, the data is lost, the result is erased, and the dream never leaves the realm of speculation. Every dream has a formula, though it is rarely written down. It exists in the way you think about it at night when you should be sleeping. It hides in the scraps of ideas you jot down on paper, the questions that haunt you in quiet moments, the persistent, what if, that refuses to fade. Each attempt to bring it to life, every step forward, every failed iteration, every small improvement, is another measurement taken, another piece of the puzzle revealed. The failed attempts are not wasted time, they are essential observations, variables tested and recorded. Without them, the final proof could never be assembled. There is a dangerous misconception that only those with the perfect plan should begin. In truth, no plan is perfect before it is tested, because testing changes the plan itself. You might begin with a vision so clear in your mind, but the moment it meets reality, it will evolve. That is not weakness in your idea, it is growth. The way light bends when it passes through a prism reveals new colors you could not see before. Likewise, the process of trial and error reveals pathways you could never have imagined without first stepping into the unknown. Consider the forces you cannot see: gravity, magnetism, time. They existed long before humans understood them, and yet they shaped everything. Your dream works in a similar way. Its influence begins before you have proof it can succeed. It changes the way you act, the decisions you make, the opportunities you notice. It draws you toward certain people and away from others. Even in its unproven state, it exerts a quiet pull on your life. But to confirm its reality, you must be willing to act on it, to turn thought into motion, to give it the chance to fail, and in failing, to teach you what it needs to succeed. Doubt will often masquerade as logic. It will whisper that you should wait until the conditions are perfect, until you have more resources, until someone else believes in it first. But the truth is, no experiment begins with certainty. The uncertainty is not a flaw, it is the very environment in which discovery thrives. If the outcome were already known, the journey would be unnecessary. Your role is not to wait for proof to come to you. Your role is to produce the proof through persistence, through curiosity, through a relentless commitment to see what happens when your dream is tested in the real world. You may run the experiment hundreds of times. You may adjust variables so small no one else notices. You may fail so often that others stop paying attention. Data. Each trial builds a body of evidence that moves your dream from fantasy to reality, from invisible to undeniable. The experiment does not end when you fail, it ends when you stop running the test. The difference between those whose dreams remain ideas and those whose dreams become reality is not genius, not luck, not even resources, it is the refusal to end the experiment before the result is found. In the pursuit of any great goal, there is an unavoidable truth: you will fail. Not once, not twice, but often enough that the failures themselves may seem to outnumber your successes. The common view treats failure as a dead end, as if it were proof that you are unfit for the task. But this is a misunderstanding of how progress works. Failure is not the opposite of success, it is the raw material from which success is built. It is not the final verdict on your capabilities, it is a set of measurements, each one whispering something about the nature of your challenge and the adjustments you must make to overcome it. When a scientist runs an experiment, the outcome is never good or bad in the emotional sense. It is simply a result, a piece of information that adds to the understanding of the subject. A failed result in a lab does not mean the experimenter is foolish, it means the conditions did not yet produce the desired outcome. And from that, new insights emerge. The same applies to life. Every failure gives you data. It tells you which method doesn't work, which path is blocked, which assumption is flawed. This data is priceless because it narrows the search for what will work. Without such elimination, you are guessing in the dark, and guesses alone rarely lead to discovery. The mind, however, has a habit of reacting to failure emotionally rather than logically. It interprets the setback as a personal flaw, a sign that you are incapable or unlucky. But failure is not a mirror reflecting your worth, it is a map. Highlighting the terrain you've already crossed and revealing the obstacles you must navigate next. If you can learn to separate your identity from your results, you will see failure for what it truly is, feedback. And feedback is how all systems, from the smallest biological cells to the largest galaxies, evolve and adapt. Consider a pilot learning to fly. Every movement of the controls produces a response from the aircraft. If the plane dips too low, that is not a sign of doom, it is a signal to adjust. If the wind pushes the craft off course, the deviation is not a defeat, it is a message from the environment, teaching the pilot how to correct the path. Without such corrections, flight would be impossible. In the same way, the failures in your journey are the winds and turbulence you must feel in order to steer toward your destination. There is also the matter of timing. Sometimes failure comes not because the method is wrong, but because the moment is not yet ripe. The seed planted in winter will not grow, no matter how fertile the soil, but this does not mean the seed is flawed. It simply means the conditions need time to align. Failure, in such cases, is the data that tells you when to act and when to wait, when to push forward and when to prepare. If you ignore this data, you may waste years forcing the impossible. If you study it, you will recognize the patterns that lead to the right moment. One of the most powerful shifts you can make is to treat every setback as part of the process rather than a disruption of it. Imagine a mathematician working on a proof. They may spend months pursuing a certain line of reasoning, only to realize it collapses under scrutiny. The collapse is not a loss, it is an essential stage that clears the way for a stronger proof. Without the failed approach, they might never have discovered the new perspective needed to solve the problem. In the same way, your failures are not detours, they are the foundation upon which the correct approach is built. Failure also has a unique way of shaping resilience. Data is not just information about the task, it is information about yourself. It reveals how you react under pressure, how you adapt when resources are limited, how you respond when expectations shatter. These are qualities no theoretical preparation can give you. You can read about persistence in books, but only repeated failure will teach you what persistence feels like in the body, how it tastes when every part of you wants to quit, and how it transforms into quiet strength when you choose not to. If success came instantly, you would have no reason to analyze, no reason to refine, no reason to grow. The data gathered from failure forces you to ask deeper questions, to test assumptions you once considered unshakable, to see patterns invisible to those who have never fallen. It is in this analysis that the real breakthrough happens, not in the applause at the end. And so, each failure, no matter how sharp or discouraging, carries within it the precise coordinates for your next attempt, the subtle but essential clues that bring you closer to your goal. Reality, as we experience it, is not fixed in stone. It is a snapshot, a temporary arrangement of events, ideas, and limitations that reflect what has already been proven possible. Imagination, on the other hand, is not bound by these constraints. It can leap forward into territories that reality has not yet reached, sketching visions that seem improbable today but may become inevitable tomorrow. This is why the mind is capable of conceiving structures, machines, relationships, and possibilities that have no immediate evidence in the physical world. Imagination is always a step ahead because it does not require permission from what exists, it builds in the realm of what could exist. The progress of humanity has always depended on this imbalance between reality and imagination. If reality dictated the boundaries of thought, no one would attempt to fly, to split the atom, to send signals through invisible air, to map the very fabric of space-time. Before each of these became reality, they were dismissed as fantasy by those unable to see beyond the limits of their present world. Yet it is in the mind of the one who can imagine without constraint that the seeds of progress take root. Such a person operates in a kind of mental laboratory where the laws are flexible, the materials unlimited, and the variables can be rearranged in ways the physical world has not yet allowed. Imagination also has the unique ability to outrun fear. Fear relies on the memory of what has gone wrong before. It looks backward, pulling its warnings from past failures and dangers. Imagination, however, looks forward, crafting visions of what can go right, often in ways that have never been seen before. In doing so, it creates a mental horizon that fear cannot cross. This is why those who lean on imagination often take steps that seem reckless to the cautious observer. They are not blind to the risks, they are simply more attuned to the possibility that the unknown may hold something greater than the known. Consider the nature of invention. When someone conceives a design for a machine that does not yet exist, they are working ahead of reality's clock. The machine is not real, yet the thought of it exists with perfect clarity in the mind. The inventor can turn it over in mental space, inspect it from every angle, test its imagined performance against imagined problems. By the time reality catches up and the first prototype is built, the design has already lived countless lives in the realm of thought. In this sense, reality is always a student of imagination, following behind and trying to match its pace. Even in personal ambition, imagination outpaces what is tangible. You might envision a version of yourself living in a way that your current circumstances do not yet support. You see yourself speaking to crowds, building a business, writing a book, exploring the world. These images may feel distant, but they are not meaningless. They are coordinates, mental destinations your choices can steer toward. Without these internal pictures, you would have no reason to stretch beyond the boundaries of what is presently possible. The dream pulls you forward precisely because it exists outside the limits of now. There is a deeper reason why imagination runs ahead. It is not restricted by the rate at which the world changes. Reality must obey physical laws, social systems, and the gradual pace of collective acceptance. Imagination obeys only the speed of thought. A breakthrough in reality may require decades of engineering, funding, and cooperation, but in the mind, it takes seconds to conceive. This rapid generation of possibilities ensures that the mind will always have more potential futures ready than the world can immediately manifest. It is this surplus of vision that drives innovation. When reality finally reaches one imagined future, there are already countless others waiting to be explored. Yet the gap between imagination and reality can create discomfort. To live with a vision the world cannot yet see is to carry both privilege and burden. Privilege, because you possess a picture of what might be that others cannot yet grasp. Burden, because you must work patiently to bridge the space between the imagined and the actual. This work demands persistence, because reality does not change at the pace of thought, it changes at the pace of effort, trial, and adaptation. The challenge, then, is to honor the speed of your imagination while accepting the slower speed of the world, using the former to guide and the latter to shape. The remarkable truth is that reality is often the shadow of imagination. What you see around you now, every tool, every system, every form of comfort or connection, was once invisible, living only in someone's mind. The phone in your hand, the building you stand in, the transportation you take for granted, all of it was imagined first. What separates the idle fantasy from the transformative vision is the decision to pursue it until the world is forced to catch up. When the mind can outrun the present without losing sight of it, reality eventually follows, reshaping itself to match the contours first drawn in thought. Time is often described as a constant, ticking forward at the same rate for everyone, unaffected by ambition, unaffected by effort. But in practice, time behaves differently for those who refuse to quit. To the uncommitted, years can slip away unnoticed, each day blending into the next with little change. To the relentless, however, time is not a passive backdrop, it becomes a tool, a variable that can be stretched, compressed, and shaped through consistent action. The hours they invest compound in value, and the moments they seize begin to accelerate outcomes in ways that seem impossible to the casual observer. Persistence alters the way we experience time. For the hesitant, a year might pass without progress because the days were spent waiting for the right opportunity. For the determined, the same year becomes a sequence of deliberate actions, each building on the last, transforming 12 ordinary months into what feels like a decade's worth of progress. The difference lies not in the number of hours but in how those hours are used. Consistency multiplies time, giving the relentless more return on every moment spent. In the early stages of any pursuit, results often appear slowly. Days can feel long, progress can seem invisible, and it may seem as though the effort is barely moving the needle. But the relentless understand that the clock is not their enemy, it is their silent collaborator. They know that effort compounds invisibly, much like interest in an account that appears stagnant at first, then grows at an accelerating pace. A breakthrough that seems sudden to others is often the result of years of groundwork laid without visible reward. There is also a psychological shift that happens when you commit fully to a goal. Time begins to lose its oppressive weight because you stop measuring it only by the end result. Instead, each day becomes an opportunity to take one more step, to solve one more piece of the puzzle. This reframing turns time from a countdown into an accumulation. Rather than seeing yourself as running out of time, you begin to see yourself as gathering it, collecting hours that can be shaped into something extraordinary. The relentless also experience a strange phenomenon. As they push forward without pause, opportunities begin to arrive more quickly. It is not that the universe suddenly conspires to help them, it is that sustained effort creates momentum, and momentum warps the experience of time. When you work consistently toward a purpose, each action creates conditions for the next action to be easier or faster. This chain effect compresses the time needed to achieve results. Tasks that once took weeks can be accomplished in days, and connections that once seemed distant suddenly appear within reach. This bending of time is not mystical, it is mechanical. Imagine two people climbing a mountain. One climbs for a single hour each day, taking frequent breaks and losing conditioning in between. The other climbs daily without long pauses. The second person's body adapts faster, their skills improve more quickly, and they reach higher altitudes in far less total time. The days are the same length for both, yet the relentless climber's path is shorter in practice because persistence has removed the wasted resets caused by stopping. Relentlessness also changes how we perceive waiting. For the impatient, waiting feels like stagnation. For the relentless, waiting is an active state. They use the time between breakthroughs to prepare, to refine, to learn. This turns so-called idle periods into periods of growth. As a result, they do not lose time in the gaps, they store it, ready to release its value when the moment comes to act. Over the course of years, this approach creates the illusion that the relentless are moving through life faster than others. They appear to achieve in 5 years what takes others 10, but the truth is that they have eliminated the invisible losses caused by hesitation, inconsistency, and distraction. In doing so, they bend time in their favor, not by controlling the clock, but by controlling themselves within it. The bending of time for the relentless is most evident when looking backward. What once seemed like an endless stretch of hard work collapses into a compact memory of intense, focused effort that reshaped the trajectory of an entire life. The milestones that once felt far away now appear close together in hindsight, as if the distance between them was compressed by sheer persistence. What seemed slow in the moment now feels like a rapid sequence of events, all because the decision to keep going transformed ordinary time into accelerated time. The world does not often surrender its treasures easily. It tests, it resists, it conceals what you seek behind layers of challenge and uncertainty. To the casual seeker, this resistance is a signal to turn back, to settle for less, to decide that perhaps the reward was never meant for them. But to the unyielding mind, these same obstacles are invitations. They are proof that the goal holds value, because anything effortless is rarely worth much. The universe, in its quiet and often mysterious way, reserves its richest rewards for those who can persist beyond the threshold where most give up. The unyielding mind operates differently from the average one. It is not easily swayed by temporary discomfort or slow progress. Where others see dead ends, it sees detours. Where others see rejection, it sees refinement. This mindset treats every resistance as a negotiation, every setback as a counteroffer, every delay as a test of commitment. It assumes that the prize exists, and that the only question is whether you are willing to keep moving toward it, regardless of how many times you are forced to adapt your route. The universe, in this sense, behaves like a careful gatekeeper. It will not open the door to someone who knocks once and walks away. But if you keep knocking, Keep showing up, keep demonstrating that your intent is unwavering. Eventually the door begins to shift. The world is full of people who almost succeeded but surrendered too soon. This is why persistence alone often outweighs raw talent, resources, or even perfect timing. Talent without persistence fades. Persistence without talent still learns and grows until it becomes formidable. It is also worth noting that the unyielding mind creates its own gravity. Persistence generates a kind of pull, drawing opportunities closer, attracting allies, mentors, and unforeseen chances. This is not magic, it is the natural outcome of visibility and consistency. The longer you hold your position and continue your pursuit, the more the world notices you. People begin to recognize your name, your work, your determination. Those who might have ignored you at the beginning start to take interest, because staying power is rare and deeply respected. Challenges themselves begin to change shape in the presence of an unyielding mind. At first, they may seem immovable, towering walls blocking the path forward. But as you press against them, as you chip away day after day, you begin to notice cracks. Small victories accumulate. What once felt impossible becomes difficult, then becomes manageable, then becomes familiar. This transformation is only visible to those who stay long enough to witness it. Those who give up early leave convinced the wall was unbreakable, never realizing how close they were to seeing it fall. The rewards of persistence are not always immediate, and they are not always what you first imagined. Sometimes the universe grants exactly what you were chasing, other times it gives something better, something you could not have envisioned until you had endured the process. The unyielding mind understands that the true value lies not just in the destination, but in the transformation that happens along the way. Each obstacle overcome, each adaptation made, each moment of resistance endured leaves you sharper, wiser, and more prepared for what comes next. There is also an element of trust involved. The universe rarely explains its reasoning. It does not tell you why the path is hard, why the wait is long, or why the first dozen attempts fail. It simply demands that you keep showing up if the goal truly matters. In this way, persistence becomes a signal, a declaration that you are serious enough to invest not just your effort, but your time, patience, and faith. When you persist, you are effectively telling the universe, I will not leave until this is done. The unyielding mind also avoids the trap of conditional commitment. Many people say they will keep going, as long as certain things happen, as long as it's easy, as long as it pays quickly, as long as others approve. But the truly unyielding mind removes the conditions. It does not rely on external validation to continue. This makes it unstoppable, because it no longer depends on favorable circumstances to act. The decision to keep going has already been made, and nothing outside can reverse it. Over time, this unwavering pursuit reshapes the landscape around you. The path that once seemed filled with obstacles becomes a record of victories, each challenge overcome marking a step closer to what you want. The universe, which once tested your resolve, begins to respond in kind, offering opportunities, connections, and breakthroughs that were invisible at the beginning. What seemed random starts to align. What once felt distant begins to move toward you, as if the very act of refusing to quit has altered the terms of the game.